How's it going, everyone? I am Dylan. This is my cousin Carlo. This is All You Can Board, and we are back with another Own It, Play It, Skip It. I think this is our fifth one, sixth one.
Something like that,
Something like that, one of the two. We got 6 more games we're going to look at here. We each chose 3. Wide variety of different types and options. I think we have some ones that I think we've been wanting to talk about for a while, too.
Yeah,
that we've
for
been
sure.
wanting to get enough of these games ready to be able to do another installment. But it was a busy month last month with our live stream, so I don't think we did Own It, Play It, Skip It last month, or if we did, it was early in the month.
Yeah.
So we are back, and I'm going to throw it right to Carlo so he can do the very first game.
Okay. Thank you, sir. We are going to talk about a game called Llamaland. So this is a 2 to 4 player polyomino game designed by Phil Walker Harding, who's also done Barren Park and Gingerbread House, which this is, I don't know, maybe not necessarily a follow-up to, but has some similarities to. I should say we haven't actually played Gingerbread House yet.
It's got DNA from
Yes,
Gingerbread House.
absolutely. So it plays in about 30 to 60 minutes, and the idea of the game is everyone starts with their own little player board. It's just a square, and there's different symbols on them for like corn, potatoes, and cacao. And there's some other symbols in the game too, like there's little huts that you can cover up to get these character cards and stuff. So on your turn, you're basically going to be taking, there's only 5 different types of polyomino shapes in the game. And I think they're all size 5, and you're taking a polyomino from the stack, and you're either adding it around the perimeter of your square board to expand it outwards, or you're going to add it on top somewhere to build upwards. So we've seen the building upwards in some polyomino games before, but not a lot of them do it, and not a lot of them do it as well as this, I think. There's some interesting stuff because, when you're building outwards, you're not gaining as many instant rewards. It's more creating opportunities for further, chain reactions, or you're creating more spaces, more options for yourself long term. As soon as you start stacking, though, when you cover up symbols, whatever you cover up, you gain those. So if I cover up like a corn and a potato, I gain those to my supply. I think you can only hold a max of 10 or 12 like goods or resources or whatever they're called at a time. And then you're using those goods to cash them in to basically attract llamas to your estate. So there's these llama cards out on the table that you shuffle up these decks of cards. And they have different point values going from highest to lowest. And basically there's kind of a race where when you get the first llama, you might be getting like 12 or 11 points or something, but then that card disappears, and now the highest card might be like a 9. So, but when you take the llama card, you also get a little llama meeple that you put on your board on an empty space, and now you can never build on top of that llama. So it's kind of restricting what you can do with your board, but also the quicker you get those llamas, the quicker you get the higher value points before your opponents get to them.
Kind of reminds me a little bit, like it's like a physical version of the estates, or whatever they're called. Is that the estates or the provinces or whatever in Dominion?
Oh,
where it's
okay.
like you get the really high point
yes.
cards, but it slows down your deck. But you have
yeah.
to get them at some point. It's like you get llamas, but it slows down how you can add board
For
things
sure.
to it. So it's like that. You weighing the benefit of the points with the efficiency that you're trying to
For
create.
sure, and I've had that happen when I'm playing with my wife and being like, okay, so I can go and take this to get that high point llama card, but then I get the llama on there, and the next turn I'm like, shoot, if I didn't put that llama there, I would have been able to put this tile here, and now I can't. So there's a lot of interesting considerations, and when you cover up these little hut things and you gain these character cards, basically you can keep gaining more and more character cards throughout the game, and they create a tableau where you can basically use their ability once per turn. They allow you to, convert certain resources into other ones, or when you cover this, you get 2 instead of 1, etc., etc. All these cool little abilities. There's races to public objectives and stuff like that. I won't get any more into the rules, but it's very cool, and it definitely incentivizes you to build upwards, because a lot of the time the public objectives are about, building, like getting llamas on higher ground and stuff like that. This is going to be an own it from me. Part of the reason, so my wife and I play a lot of polyomino games together. She really likes polyomino games, and there's something about the kind of the South American theme with the llamas and in the mountains and stuff that is really like kind of sentimental to her. I haven't been to South America myself, but I definitely like sort of was gravitated towards the theme a little bit as well. And this game exceeded both of our expectations. We've played it together a few times and really enjoyed it. I will say I've only played it as a 2-player game so far, and with 3 or with 4, I think there'll be a little more competition, obviously, for like the public objectives and when you get them, taking character cards from the market row, that kind of thing. Probably increases the playing time by a little bit. That's probably pushes it closer to the hour mark. But either way, it plays quick, great family game, and one that, again, if you're not the type of person who likes polyomino games, or you don't play them that often, this might not be worth owning for you. Maybe I just recommend you would try it. But for me, it's an own it, because this will see the table a lot, even more so as, our family grows and we get older.
Yeah. It's I haven't played Llamaland and I haven't played Gingerbread House, but I own Gingerbread House, and like Carlo mentioned, they share a lot of DNA. Or this one might be considered like a spiritual follow-up. I don't know. Just the building upwards and the way it like looks in aside from the theme is very similar to Gingerbread House. So I think I'd be really interested to play this one with you finally, but then also play Gingerbread House, especially if we could play them both like really close together.
Definitely.
And properly compare the experiences, because I'm also curious because this one specifically says family game on it, whereas Gingerbread House doesn't, but it could just be that one came first and they just identify like, hey, this is working as a family game. Let's repackage it as Llamaland and change some stuff. Like, I don't know. I'd have to play them both to really understand that a little bit better.
Definitely.
But I'm curious, how much they have in common, and also like, which one I'll end up liking, or if it'll change. Like maybe you'll end up liking Gingerbread House more. Who knows, right?
Yeah. So. Yeah, but it's got an interesting little engine building thing too, and even after playing a few times, I kept thinking like, oh, next time I should definitely do this better, and I can do that better. Like, it feels like there's a lot more to it than the rule set would have you think. So yeah, that is Llamaland. Again, this is an own it from me. Definitely recommend you check it out.
Awesome. All right. The first game I'm going to look at is this little box game called Sequoia. So Sequoia is a game I had on in my cart or in my wish list on a bunch of online retailers for a while, and just either wasn't in stock or it was always one of those games I was never going to go out of my way to buy. I was going to be just added to an order. Finally picked it up, and I'm glad I did. It has a lot in common with Can't Stop, but also a lot that's different from Can't Stop. So in this game, you have basically a bunch of different area control spots, and they go from 2 to 12, which is the die values that your dice can add up to. And on your turn, you have 5 dice. You're going to roll 5 dice, and you're going to make 2 pairs out of those five dice, and you're going to have 1 left over that you don't use. Whatever value those add up to, that's where you're going to get to place one of your tokens onto one of these area control spots. And everyone else is doing that and revealing dice at the same time. So you don't know exactly where everyone else is going to go because you're revealing at the same time, so you might be going for something that ends up in competition. You might go into something where no one else got those die values. You might have the option to make a combination of dice, and you don't choose it because you think someone else is going to go there, and it turns out they don't go there. So even though it is really simple, you're just rolling the dice and making combos, there's actually a lot to think about and try to suss out with like what your opponents are doing, what they're going to do, and taking risks on, well, am I going to try to play catch up on this number, or do I think they're going to keep trying to reinforce that number? If I do go after it and they go after it too, I've kind of wasted my turn in that regard. Do I just pivot and go for a different number that's worth similar amount of points to try to get them to have to, fight me on that one or let me have it? Like, for a quick game and for such a simple rule set, there's actually a lot of decision making going on, and because it shares so much with Can't Stop, which is a game I love but just haven't been able to find the physical version of, it's just nice to have this in-person version of it that is different and actually incorporates this gameplay element, which is area control, that I love and often don't get to play enough. And I purposely don't, not purposely, but I don't get to play enough because of the length that a lot of those games are. So, one of the reasons I talk a lot about a game like Ethnos, or have it so highly regarded, is it scratches that area control itch for me in such a big way, but in a smaller package that's digestible and that I really enjoy. Sequoia goes even smaller with a 10-minute game, which is what it's advertised as. It's probably 10 to 15 minutes on average, and it still scratches that area control itch. Probably not in the same effective way as other ones, but if that's a genre you really love and you're looking for a filler game that incorporates it, there's almost, I don't know if there's a better option to be able to do it in 10 minutes with a game that is basically pure area control mixed with a push your luck dice.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's powered by the dice rolls.
Yes.
Roll your dice and then just decide where you want to try to win area control battles. It's an interesting little combination.
Yeah, and so it never feels, whereas Can't Stop, you can do all this work and then just bust because you push your luck too much, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. That's the beauty of Can't Stop. This one, you're never punished for taking risks because you still get to place a token on the board. It's more just like, how much can you read into what your opponents are doing, or what you think that they're going to roll, or the probability of that they're going to go after this number again, or whatever. So it's powered by the dice, but it's not purely luck based, because you have to make some decisions even with the combinations you're choosing. Right?
And you're playing the odds as well as your opponents, because you have to try and guess, are they going to try and fight me for that or not, as well as what are the odds I'm going to roll that again, or that they're going to roll it again. And there's a surprising amount to consider there. Yeah, so Sequoia is going to be a play it for me. It's a play it because it's in a really congested, I guess is the right word to use, area of the board game stage, which is filler games. There's tons of small box games that are not just existing but also great, that I feel like it just naturally has to compete with. And because of that, it might not be
for everyone's collection. It might not be, well, definitely won't be for you if you don't like area control games or anything dice-based. For me, it might leave my collection one day depending what other filler games come in or go out, or how often it's hitting the table. But right now I could easily see, I don't know that I have any other games that reliably play in 10 minutes. And I feel like having one that I enjoy so much as Sequoia so far, that I can play that quickly is going to be something super valuable to my collection. That it's just shy of an own it because of the uncertainty of filler games. I have tons of games that have left my collection, ones that I'm even considering getting rid of now, that are just kind of have overstayed their welcome a little bit because there's other options.
Yeah,
stuff,
it's
right?
tough to say if this is going to outlast some games like For Sale and Ink and Gold and some of those classics that we already know we've played like 40, 50 times or whatever.
Yeah, like I feel like for example, like for someone like you, that if I have this and we end up playing it here and there, are you ever going to feel the need to like go own Sequoia, or is it going to be like, no, I'm content just playing it when it's a filler game at Dillon's or whatever, right? And I feel like that's where it ends up as a play it for me, is like I ended up being the one to buy it, but if Carla had bought it, I wouldn't have owned it. Then I probably would just played it at your place every so often.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, great game still, really enjoy it. That is Sequoia. And I should mention it plays up to 5, which is really, really good as well. But I probably wouldn't recommend it at 2. The area control aspect of the competition makes it that 3 and up is going to be where you're going to have the most fun with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's move on here to a 2-player game called Great Plains. This is 2-player only, co-designed by Trevor Benjamin and Brett J. Gilbert, published by Lookout Games, so same company that did Llamaland, which I just spoke about. This game really surprised me. A quick rules overview is basically that you, each player, so it's the foxes versus the snakes. They're not like asymmetric or anything, they're the same exact rule set. You have 20 of these little tokens, and you also start with 3 of these caves. So it's a variable setup where you have these 7 double-sided hexagon tiles that create the map. You flip them over, mix them up in whatever way, and you configure them in this big hexagon kind of thing, these 7 tiles. There's always going to be a different, maybe not always, but there's quite a few different configurations of different map. Then you're going to take turns placing these little caves on the map. There's each of the tiles has, I think, 1 possible cave spot. So you're going to take turns placing your 3 caves out. So there's going to be 1 that doesn't get placed on. And then you're going to take turns from then on placing one of your pieces, either a fox or a snake, either adjacent to one of your caves or adjacent to any other previous piece that you have. There's different spots and you're just kind of branching out, trying to get to different areas. And there's basically 3 different types of spots on the map. There's the mountains, which you can't go onto at all. Then there's the grass spots where there's abilities that you can pick up, which are horses, bears, and eagles, which I'll get into in a second. And then there's these meadows, which that's the only way you get points in this game. So the meadows are going to be, we were just talking about area control. This is like area majority, I guess, where you're trying to get the majority of pieces on these. At the end of the game, you're going to look at each of the meadows and see who has the majority of the pieces. Whoever does is going to get the full amount of points on there, which is just based on the number of pieces. So it's super simple in terms of the scoring. What makes this game especially interesting is not only the variable setup and where you put your caves, kind of like there's this sort of like analyzing the map right from the start. Even when you're putting the caves at the beginning, I find is so interesting because you're trying to figure out where is the biggest meadow, because that's going to be worth the most points. So how close can I be to that meadow? And if I am there, what about the other meadows nearby? Am I leaving, if I go put my caves on this side of the map, am I leaving 3 high-scoring meadows on the other end that my opponent's going to get to way easier than me? Because you can't just jump way across the map. When you go on these horses or eagle spots or whatever, again, those places don't score you any points, but you get a token that you get to use on a future turn. The horses let you move 2 spaces at once instead of 1. The eagles let you fly over mountains, and the bears let you push your opponent either into a wall and crush them, basically eliminating their piece, or push them right off the map. So there's a lot of interesting it's such a simple rule set. It's got 2 or 3 pages of rules, but I love this game. I've already played it probably a good 9 or 10 times. A couple times I've played it as like a best of 3, sitting down with someone and just playing it right away. It says on the box 20 minutes, but like we've played games in 15 minutes. I've played a best of 3 in like 30, 40 minutes before, especially once it's out on the table. Quick setup, very quick to play. The turns are like lightning quick, but there's so much to consider on your turns because of that dynamic. It kind of reminds me in some ways of Blue Lagoon and Fjords. And not only the way you're branching out, but trying to again determine like, okay, should I give up on this meadow now and go fight for something there? Or if I go here, is that the most pressing need right now? And then are they going to beat me there? Like, there's all these little priorities, and there's a limit on even the tokens the abilities. So let's say I go collect 3 bear tokens. Even if I don't use them, now you can't collect any bear tokens. So the spaces that you would go on would be useless. And if you end the game with these tokens, then they don't do anything for you at the end. So you're gonna have to you only get 20 turns, and you really have to make them count.
It's basically a game but including aspects of the second phase of Fjords and Blue Lagoon in terms of, especially more so with Fjords, because I know Blue Lagoon has like the scoring salad,
different types of
things, right?
different ways of scoring it.
But yeah, whereas Fjords, the first phase ends with you having place. Well, and you're building the board with this game. The board starts there, but ends with you having your huts that you're going to branch out from. This game starts basically with the start of that phase. The board's there, and you put your caves out, and then you start from there. Which is why I think I liked it. Is I'm noticing more and more a lot of games that we've played or that I'm finding that have like shared DNA from Fjords. Not to say Fjords is the first game to do that or whatever, but it's the first one I experienced that did that. And so I really enjoyed it when you played. My only concern, I think I shared it with you when we played, but now you would probably have a better idea of this, having played it as many times as you did, was that there was going to be setups of the board, because it's randomized where they were, that would lead to much less interesting games. Which isn't a big issue, because that could easily be alleviated, being like, oh, it's really fun when the board is like set up in one of these ways. Let's just do the configuration ourselves. But because you can randomly place them, right?
Yeah, you are supposed to. You're supposed to randomly place them.
Yeah. So like I suppose if that did even become the case of the game, you could choose to house rule and alleviate that. But that was my concern after playing it the once or twice, is there going to be a formation of the boards that just causes things to be much less interesting or interactive with the players. But I only played that one time, so I remember I said that to you, but I was like, I don't know the answer. But now that you've played it a bunch, do you find that there has been any where you're like, I didn't like that board setup?
No, honestly, because here's the thing. That's part of, like, if I think I wouldn't like the game as much if it was just like a set board that you pulled out of the box, because it would be the same, like, it would defeat the whole looking at the setup and trying to figure where's the highest priority, what am I close to with my caves, and having, I think the game you and I played, we had one huge meadow that was worth 10 points, and I think that was what made you feel that way, is because we were fighting over that one for so long, and then a lot of the other ones were kind of an afterthought at the end, where it was like, okay, well then I guess I'll go here, or once someone has 5 pieces on there and you only have 2, are you really going to spend 2 turns trying to fight them for it, and then they just place another piece? I've since played other games where there's, the highest one on the board is worth like 5 or 6 points only, and every time I found it's just a different challenge, a different kind of like game state to analyze, and I love it. This game continues to surprise me. I worried a bit at first, like, is it going to hold up after this many plays? And it has. This is definitely an own it for me. It is now one of my favorite 2-player only games. Like, this really, really surprised me. And again, I think another thing that I have to really like highlight about it, I don't know if it's the designers, developers who deserve the credit for this, but I think it would have been easy to get carried away and have like, oh, let's make them have asymmetric powers for each side, or let's include more abilities instead of just these 3, have 5 abilities or 6 abilities, and I think it would have weighed the game down. And I know sometimes people want more options and stuff, but I think they struck the perfect point of like, you could put this game back on the shelf and not play it for years, and when you pull it back out, you probably don't even have to check the rules again. It's so easy to play, and then all the decision making just comes down to analyzing the board rather than trying to remember the rules or figure out how to get the best out of this one ability. I love this game.
It's funny you said that when you did, because I was about to ask you. I had it planned. I was going to be like, I have a really important question for you, Carlo. And I was going to say, if they did have, would you be for or in favor of giving them house ruling asymmetrical abilities, where the fox can jump over mountains and the snake can slide around tiles and stuff?
No, none of that needed. And I think I read online someone was saying too that they want like an expansion for the game. Like, for me, I don't think this game needs an expansion. I wouldn't want an like, maybe if they do, I would consider it.
Okay, okay, this one is legitimate. What if they released a standalone expansion that can be played on its own, that's also 2-player only, that has 2 different animals in it and different powers, with the option to combine both versions of the game to allow you to play 3 or 4 if you wanted, or you can play either one at 2?
I think, again, it's just going to defeat the simplicity of it, and also is going to add to the setup time. Oh, which ones of these do? Do I want to play with this one? And like, I don't know. I think it feels so well balanced. It feels like when you read a good book that's like 200 pages and you're like, damn, credit to that editor. Like, how did they squeeze this much into a 200? This is like a John Wyndham book in board game form. Shout out to John Wyndham, greatest author of all time. If you haven't read any of his books, go do that right away. But anyways, that is Great Plains. Highly recommend you check this out. I think this is a very underrated, very overlooked game right now that more people need to try out.
All right, I am also looking at a 2-player only game for
No, there's a solo mode.
Yeah, sorry, 1 to 2 players.
Wow.
And that is Caesar. Seize Rome in 20 minutes! Everything has an
thought you were gonna
exclamation
forget
mark.
about that.
Everything has an exclamation mark in this game. And it actually says in the rules specifically you have to be shouting the entire time you play.
Yeah, and I think it's a follow-up to Blitzkrieg,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
If I'm not mistaken.
Every game needs punctuation, and not just exclamation marks. Like, it should just be Llamaland. Like, it's just a question mark in there. Why not? Like, everything, even just some periods. Anyways, okay.
And also, Ethnos that you mentioned before, same designer, Paolo
Yes,
Mori.
Paolo Mori, exactly. So Caesar is a game that I had heard about, or I'd heard about this or Blitzkrieg or both for a while, and honestly never really looked into because the theme wasn't something that spoke to me, and so I really never gave it a fair shot, and because I never even looked into the rules. I was just like, I have other things I want to check out, whatever. When I finally did, and especially when I realized that it's Paolo Mori and how much I love Ethnos, I decided to pick it up just based on like skimming the rules once and thinking it looked cool. We played it, and it is really, really fun, and it's really fun because it's, again, kind of in the same way that Great Plains is just this, it's a very simplistic design but done effectively. That's kind of what's happening in Caesar. You have this board, and we're trying to control as many take control of as many of the territories, or not even as many as the territories. It doesn't come down to how many you win. It's whoever gets rid of all their tokens first.
Yeah.
So usually winning more will get rid of your tokens more, but there's things you can do with the powers and stuff to speed up how many tokens you get rid of as well. So you're just trying to gain control of territories, and how you do that is you're pulling these tokens out of this bag, and you're always going to have a few available behind your screen in front of you. I think it's 2, but there's a way to get more with one of the powers. Your token is going to have a sort of an attack value on either side of this circle. You have to place it between 2 territories with one number facing one territory, one number facing the other one, and you're basically declaring your attack value for each of those territories. After a territory has had every circle spot placed around it, you're going to look and see who has more sword values, or it's not always swords, more number values, whatever it is, for that territory, and that person is going to get to place their token into that territory, getting rid of one of theirs from their supply, and I think it's the person who places the last token surrounding it gets the power that's on it, I believe is how that goes. Right. So that's the entire game. Like, there's more to it with the powers and all that kind of stuff, but that's essentially the whole game. Is you're just trying to decide where you're placing these tokens to declare your values in different areas and try to win as many as you can while giving up the ones that maybe you aren't prioritizing as much. But because there's these powers that you can get, and because they're actually pretty influential in terms of how the game goes, it's sort of elevated by the fact that you can't just try to win territories. You have to also look and say, okay, well, I can't remember which one it is, but it's the one that has the building on the tile. And the way that one works is when you get it, you get rid of a certain number of tokens underneath it equal to how many of those you already own. So I think the first game we played, I ended up getting 4 of those in a row, and I got rid of so many tokens that it was insurmountable to come back from, right? Yeah. And whereas after that, when I think you ended up getting a whole bunch of them, or we got to even
at
split
least
I
didn't let you run away with them in the second game in the same way. I realized the power of those a little too late. Yeah.
So it really changes. It becomes more than just, where are the the high number values? Which ones can I win? Which ones can I lose? Or which ones can I sacrifice? You also have to look and say, okay, which of these powers do I need to get, or which ones do I need to stop my opponent from getting? Based even if I don't want to go for these buildings, I can't just let my opponent get them all because it'll be a for sure victory. So now I have to stop them from winning those territories or placing the last token on them. So it's really interesting how such a simplistic design. Even from I think, did we do a best of 3? I think we did, right?
We played at least 2. We might have played 3 actually.
Yeah. And so even just from that, knowing how different each of those games were, based on because everything is also randomized, where the special powers end up and stuff like that. Yeah. I think one of the games, there was a huge fight over Italia, and that ended up being the swing of the game. Is you ended up winning Italia, and then that gives you, I think, 2 of your tokens going in there. You got the bonus from it as well.
Right.
So.
And because it's central, it's easier to connect, having the connections with the other places as well. It's just a good territory to have. But it takes a lot to fight over it. It's
honestly really great. This is going to be an own it for me. But as it's known, I think I've done this in every one I played Skip, and I'm putting an asterisk next to this one. But this one's an important asterisk, because this is a 1 to 2 player game, and I know that there are a lot of people out there that love when games play solo, and it might even influence you when you think I don't know how often I'll play it 2, but I can also play by myself. I will say that if I was basing this off of the solo game, this would be a hard skip, and it's rare that I could say that about player counts that drastically, but the single player mode on this feels very, very tacked on to the point of just we have a solo mode. I won't get into all the rules of it, but essentially with how much is going on in the solo mode, I might as well have just set up for a 2-player game and played both roles as if I was that person, what they would strategically do, and I'd probably have a better time than trying to follow the solo mode, because you end up doing that anyways, but you have to do it with these automated tiles and stuff too, and it ends up saying, you flip this tile. Oh, is this in this area? Well, then do this. Oh, but also consider if this is here, then you're going to do this. Oh, if this person has enough value here, it's like, well, yeah, at that point, you're just saying what would be the smartest move.
Yeah.
So it felt like a really, I don't want to. It felt like a really poor solo mode in a game, but yet this 2-player mode is fantastic. So I really think it is just a 2-player game that they added a solo mode onto. So I would say don't get this for the solo mode, but if you're looking for a really good 2-player game, Caesar's now one of my favorite of the last year of the new games that have come out, especially at 2 players. I just really, really enjoyed this game, and I think you had a really good time with it too.
I was really surprised with it too. Just same thing, like the theme did not appeal to me at all, so I kept thinking, I'll just try someone else's copy one day, and I'm really glad you got it. And I have to say the most interesting thing to me about this game is the little tokens and abilities, because they open up the game in different ways. Like I think one of them also, because I don't know if you mentioned, but you have, what is it, 3 tokens or 2 behind your screen at the start of the game?
I think it's 2, and you can get an ability that lets you have more.
Yeah, but you can get multiple of that ability. So you can end up having 4 or 5 tiles. So like sometimes, these tiles might have like a 6 and a 1, or like a 3 and a 2, or 3 and a 3, or whatever. And sometimes you're really limited by what you have, and having the extra tiles can be a huge thing. There's another one I think that lets you take another turn right after the next, so it can help you, like someone has an advantage, you can place 2 big tiles out suddenly, or tokens, to steal a territory. There's all kinds of ways that it feels like you can twist the game around and overcome little things, so it doesn't feel like you're just going to fall behind and then there's no way back into it. It feels like there's always some way to claw your way back in. Yeah, really, really cool game. Highly recommend.
Don't sleep on this, especially if you. I guess I mean that mostly because of the theme. If that's not something that appeals to you,
right.
Don't let that deter you.
There it is. There it is. At least you catch yourself now. You don't even need to catch you when I'm watching it in post or whatever. Yeah.
Don't let that deter you from getting it, because it's honestly such a competitive and great 2-player game, and it has that aspect of what I love so much about Santorini is that it's this great head-to-head 2-player game that really invites you and encourages you to just do best of 3s, best of 5s, come back often with the same people and have this competition with them, because it's just, you get better at each time you play, but it's also different every time you play. And this one does it in such a quick, 20 minutes, like with an exclamation mark, super, super quick, that, I feel like you're rarely, at least for me, I'm rarely going to sit down just to play one. I think this will be one we bring to the cabin and we're like, let's do a best of 5. Because honestly, we could probably get through a best of 5 in less than an hour. You know what I mean? So, phenomenal game. I really enjoyed, and I'm really, really curious now to play Blitzkrieg. I think we need to check that one out as well.
I think it's interesting too that you brought up the comparison to Great Plains, because I'm realizing now more and more how similar it is in a lot of ways. Like obviously the board itself there's an actual board instead of creating a board, but it's the tokens going everywhere that adds that variable setup, and 20 minutes, the whole there's a lot
of connections between all the games we've picked so far, like with designers.
Except these last 2, I would say.
Exactly.
These last 2 have been sort of an anomaly here, but okay. So this last one, I think it's the oldest one of the 3 on the list here, and this is Praga Caput Regni.
This is older than Llamaland?
Yeah, Llamaland's 2021.
What?
Yeah. Llamaland and Great Plains are both 2021.
I'm out to lunch. I thought Llamaland was like 2015 or something
like
that.
You just never heard of this game for many years. Coming from the guy who loves Phil Walker Harding. Wow, the level of disrespect.
That's a lot of disrespect.
So this is designed by Vladimir Suki, co-published by, I think it's Delicious Games and Rio Grande Games. I will say right now, before I go any further, I haven't played any of Vladimir Suki's other games, so I can't really compare this to like Shipyard, Underwater Cities. What else do you do? Pulsar 2049. But yeah, anyway, so it's a 1 to 4 player game, and it's sort of a love letter to the city of Prague. So it's about building the city of Prague. King Charles has commissioned different people to help build it, and you're all competing to see who's going to gain the highest amount of the king's favor. So if you haven't seen this game before, it's got a very big, illustrious, like the board is just stunning. Like the artwork on there, the way it's all developed, like you could just sit there mesmerized staring at the board for a long time. It's a beautiful game to look at, and there's all kinds of little gadgets. I'm going to talk about the kind of tactile aspect of this game and how that's such a big draw as we go further on. But there's different areas of the board. There's basically an area near the bottom where you can be gaining these tiles to put out like buildings, where there's going to be some competition for some area majority stuff with these, what are they called, plaza tiles that go out, and there's some variable setup there, so every game that's going to be different. There's going to be a King's Road area where you can spend resources and take actions to move down this road that has 5 different stages, and when you get to the end of it, you're going to have to cross this bridge, but you're going to need eggs. Eggs are a big, very important resource in this game. Leftover eggs at the end give you a bunch of points, but you can also use them throughout the game, and thematically, I don't know if this is a rumored thing or if it's actually like historically accurate, but so it goes that apparently eggs were used as a binding agent in constructing this bridge in Prague. So there's still eggs holding that bridge together today, apparently. Again, I don't know.
Uncooked or cooked eggs? Like, do they cook them before they use them?
No, uncooked. What are you talking about? What kind of question is cooked eggs?
Well, my follow-up question was going to be, if you said cooked, it's going to be what, like scrambled, fried?
No, and now they must have beaten the eggs first, too, because otherwise the whites and the yolks, it just wouldn't work properly. So that's an egg discussion, suddenly. You've got other areas. You've got these seals. There's different places where you can get these seals that give you endgame scoring opportunities. Then there's this big stacked, like, multi-level, there's a cathedral and I think a hunger wall, and there's different ways that you can progress on these. You can move to the sides to get points. You can also move up on levels of these. All kinds of stuff going on here, and it all happens through this action wheel on the board where you take these two-sided, they're almost like sort of like equivalent of dominoes, they're hexes though, but you take a tile off this spot on this wheel and it'll have 2 possible actions, and there's 6 actions in the game that you can take, and you're going to pick one of those 2 actions, take the action, but where you took the tile from, there is going to either potentially be a cost or a reward, and it's also going to be associated with a potential bonus that can trigger. The game, you only get 16 turns in the whole game, and it's a game that plays in, I mean, it really does depend on player count. It says right on the box, 45 to 150 minutes, so it's quite the range.
Yeah, that's a huge range.
Absolutely.
And we played it 2 players, and we didn't get anywhere near 45 minutes, but it was like the first time I played, the only time I played, but it was also the first time we had played it and we learned the rules.
Yeah.
I'm wondering...
Or no, the first time, I had played it solo a few times before, but yeah, still.
I'm wondering, you know, if we played this like 3 or 4 times, 2 players recently, and then we played it, how accurate the 45 minutes
Yeah, because I think well, here's the thing, because regardless of player count, every player gets 16 turns, so like it really is going to be for sure longer with every player. I've heard some people say that solo they can get it done in like 30, 40 minutes, 45 minutes. I think our game probably took just over 2 hours, including the rules, but I think once we both knew it, if we were to play it again, we could probably get it done in like hour 15, hour and a half, I would think would be realistic. But part of it depends, like, because, you know, a lot of these, it reminds me in some ways of a Vital Lacerda game. Like, I think of Vinuge, which you only get 12 turns, and it feels like for a game that takes potentially an hour and a half, 2 hours, every turn matters so much. Everything you do, like, you could do something on your first or second turn that later you realize, oh, I did that wrong, I didn't capitalize on that efficiency, I started doing something else, I didn't actually, like, take advantage of that and build off of that throughout the game. So here's the thing. I've only played it solo and 2 players, but I don't know if I even have the desire to play it with 3 or 4. Definitely not with 4. I think there'd be way too much downtime. I don't think it would add, like, especially because the player interaction in this game is so low that I think anything beyond 2, you're not gaining anything to the play experience, and it's just adding time onto it. But going back to the tactile aspect, I just want to mention too, you have your own player board with these other wheels that turn, and you have these cubes that fall into spots where basically when the wheel turns, it has this little notch that sticks out, so it'll hit the cube, which basically notifies you that you have to remove the cube so that it can spin, and now you get this reward. There's these production tracks that you can move up on that when you reveal stuff under the cubes, there's other rewards. So there's all kinds of stuff. Like, the kind of toy factor on this is so fun to just actually play the game and move stuff around, especially when these kind of Euro games sometimes can feel dry or the theme can feel a little abstracted or whatever.
And I will say that, like, this does gigantic board with a lot of stuff on it better than most games, and specifically the one I'll compare it to recently is Bitoku. And nothing about the gameplay, because I like Bitoku. We'll get into that in a future video. But if we're just going by the board itself, I think they're both this kind of size long boards.
I think so, yeah.
And I think this does it better in terms of it being enjoyable to look at and take in. Whereas I found that with Bitoku, you look at all the stuff going on, and sometimes it's just like overwhelming, and it's just like I don't even quite know what I'm looking at all the time. Whereas this one, I never quite got that overwhelming feeling. It might be the fact that it's like it's split up by a river, and there's like clear areas of the board. I don't know.
I think that's it. I think visually it's just easier, whether it's before the rules or even after the rules. It's kind of easier to know where like things are, and everything that's kind of just like that works together usually is in the same spot of the map. I feel like it's a bit more intuitive, and because you're building the city and like the theme just makes a little more sense maybe than in Bitoku, or comes through a little more. So yeah, there's a lot to like about this game. This is going to be a play it from me, and the reason is mostly because of the fact that for how thinky it is and how long it can potentially be, and just what I mentioned about player counts,
I'm probably never going to want to play it with 3 or 4 players. And as a 2-player game, because of, again, how long it takes, and if we don't play it often enough, there's going to be some refreshing of rules. Like, if we were to, let's say, go to the cabin next weekend and take 20, 30 games, like, I don't think this is one I would be vouching for to make that cut. And I don't know how many other people I'm going to want to teach this to and play it just like once as a 2-player game. This is probably going to see more plays from me, if at most, as a solo game. And I think that's actually where I've enjoyed it most, because I can kind of sit there. It is a game really about efficiency and squeezing them out most you can out of every turn. And I feel like I've enjoyed that most solo, even though there are people who I think might see this and think, hey, that looks really cool. I might want to show it to them here and there. But I think it's a game that I'll probably play like a couple times a year and be happy to play it and really enjoy it every time I play it. But not like, I wouldn't be sad if I didn't own it kind of thing. So that is why it's a play it for me.
And for all our friends watching, you heard it here. Carlos says he will not play with 3 or 4. So if you're ever coming to play games with us, don't even ask, because he's going to say no.
Exactly. Yep. Well said. Oh, credit also, the rulebook is very good. I read through this once, just start to finish, and I felt like I was totally ready to play. Barely had to go back to it. Like, really impressed with the rulebook for a game of this level of complexity.
Which is an important thing too. Like,
Absolutely.
that goes over, like, not that a bad rulebook would ever get me to not play, but it's a frustrating introduction to a board game you're excited about, to have to be like, I guess I'm gonna have to go look up stuff because I can't figure out anything about these rules,
or even
right?
just when it feels daunting, like it's too much. But the way everything was laid out, really, really well done on the rulebook. So that is Praga, Caput, Regni.
Nice. And our games do have something in common, because this game is a game that also has domino tiles in it.
Oh, also in hex shaped.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't even think. Okay, never mind.
And that's Witchstone. So the similarities continue.
Right.
So Witchstone is a game that I've been eager to talk about. I just need to play it again.
Wait, who are the 2 designers? Can you pronounce their names?
Dan,
I know
you
you
got
can
me.
pronounce one of them.
Reiner Knizia and Martin. I'm why'd you make me do this? Chiachera, I think it is, but Martino,
not Martin.
Yeah. Martin Chacha. Just completely.
I'm so sorry, Martino.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I fully admit I'm just not the guy to pronounce designers' names.
Sorry, I threw you off your game.
No,
here.
that's good.
Tell the folks about
Yeah,
the
so it is a Knizia design, a co-design, which is what kind of drew me to it in the first place, but also the fact that it seemed on the surface when I first got it that it was like, oh, this is going to be like a way more involved, like busier, complex experience. Mm-hmm. And even though there's more going on than like a game like Lost City is of his, once you get the rules down, it's actually a pretty quick flowing, simple game in execution. The entire game is basically based around get as many actions as you can. Like, everything you're doing is essentially in some way going to get you more actions, more turns, more you can do. The crux of which is the fact that you're creating this domino thing in your cauldron. So you're adding dominoes to your cauldron, and every time you add one, you're going to take the actions that are on the domino that you place, and it has 2 symbols on it. But you're not just going to take each action once. Well, you might, but when you place it, if you're touching any similar symbols in a cluster, that's how many actions you're going to take of that action. So if I have the wand action and I place it next to in a grouping that already has 4 wands, so now there's 5. I'm taking 5 wand actions rather than 1. So this game becomes a game of efficiency on how well you can craft your cauldron, and then in what you're chaining into, like, those actions will often earn you more actions, where if I'm moving along the wand, that might lead to more actions for a different area of the board that's going to lead to more actions over here. So
it feels very much like a roll and write in that sense. You do this combo as the game goes on.
And I feel like explaining it that way to people, like, once you know what the actions are, it just becomes how efficient can you be in earning them. And so it's a very specific game in that regard, in that, like, everything you do is going to have to be to earn actions. And when you have turns where you only take like 1 action or 2 actions, when we played last time as a 3-player, there was multiple times where I remember you saying, or myself saying, or whatever, oh, this didn't feel like, this isn't going to be a good turn. This doesn't feel a good turn. And it's not that we didn't do anything. It's just that we only took like 2 actions or 3 actions rather than 8 or 9 or 14.
And especially once you get a turn where you get like 6 to the next turn only get 2 or 3, it doesn't feel great. But like it is part of the game, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're limited by the tiles you have behind your screen too.
Exactly. And so just kind of quickly go overview what the rules are like. Essentially, you have this board with all these different areas, and all of them equate to one of the actions that you're going to be placing in your cauldron. The centerpiece in the middle of the board is something where you're going to be placing your witch meeples onto, and then moving those witch meeples along routes that you've crafted using a different action. So you can only move them when you've crafted those routes. And once you move them to a spot, it's essentially like you control that spot. No one else can control it now, and all of them have bonus tiles that you want to be the first one to get. There's a wand at the bottom that is essentially just like almost, well, not like the King's Road, but it functions the same way where you're just moving across it. But the cool thing with the wand is that if you ever move across the wand and you overtake first place, I believe it is, on the wand, you get double for the spots that you passed or landed on, rather than a single instance of whatever they give you. So you end up multiplying what you're getting. So there's an incentive to like not leave the wand too long, because otherwise one person goes way ahead and then it's harder to pass them. But
then again, that one person isn't getting the double actions because they're not leapfrogging anyone either.
Yeah,
so
and it's
interesting.
But the wand actions are good too. So it's like
for sure.
letting someone get them. Yeah, it's an interesting, like, you can see multiple strategies, right? There's an action where you're taking cards. Those cards could be end game goals, or they could be things that give you more actions, like most things in the game do. There's an area at the top where you're sort of going around this circular rondelle, and every time you pass different markers, you're gaining tokens that either give you points or give you bonus actions or allow you to place bonus symbols into your cauldron for more multipliers. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in terms of these action spaces. But again, everything you're doing is obviously to get points, but is to do that, you're just getting as many actions as you can. And when you boil it down to that, it's a lot easier to look at the game and not get overwhelmed. Like I think I did the first time I put the board down. I'm like, oh my god, I got to learn this game.
Yeah, I thought there was going to be way more going on. In terms of rules, I thought it was going to be way tougher to learn as well. But it was pretty simple.
You're just taking actions as many as you can, and it has that that Knizia touch to it where everything feels. I don't even know how best to describe this, but like everything feels super important but tight at the same time. Like you have to think about where you're placing something in your cauldron. Like I can place this domino and I could think like, well, yeah, this one I can't find a good spot for, so this one's just going to go wherever. But you really set yourself back, like probably over the course of the game by making a wrong place of a domino. You could have set yourself back like 10 actions, 12 actions. And it even says in the rule book the max number of actions you can possibly get with an most optimal play. And so you can even count up how many actions you get there at the game and see how optimally you play each game in terms of how many actions you get. Because it's not going to necessarily win you the game, but if I take 32 actions all game and you take 20, those additional 12 actions are going to be hard for you to overcome if I'm getting points on every one of them, right? So I feel like it makes it a game that really rewards repeat plays and coming back to, because you will get better every time you play. You will find different strategies that work to be optimal, and you do have to respond to what your opponents are doing. If you create all these routes that, like I think like I did in the game that we last played, you ended up using my routes. Even though you have to like, there's a penalty to doing that, but it made sense for you to use my routes to get more done rather than you going out and crafting your own. Where next time you play, you might end up getting those actions earlier. You're crafting the routes, and then every game I feel like will feel a little bit different while still having the essence of get as many actions and be as efficient as you can. Right?
Yeah. So. Speaking of which, one thing I don't think you mentioned that I think you should talk about just a little bit is the crystals on the cauldron and the spots on the outside of the cauldron, because that is really interesting and it plays into the combo potential and the snowballing.
It shares that with Llamaland too. The llamas come on and block spaces. This one's reversed. The crystals are up. Man, the crystals so much in common. So there's these crystals that start on your board, and one of the actions is to essentially move crystals a space at a time for every action to get them off your board. And wherever they leave your board, they're going to give you more actions, more bonus actions. The other incentive to getting those crystals off your board, though, is that you can't place a tile where there is a crystal. So it's holding a spot hostage, and if you really, really want to place there, you can sacrifice a crystal. I think you lose a certain amount of points that gets progressive.
Increasing, 1 point for crystal, then 2 points for the next crystal, etc.
Yeah, so there's this way you can get rid of them, but obviously you're then also losing the actions that you would get by moving that crystal off the board.
Exactly, yeah.
So
and there's the black crystal, which can get you an extra bonus if you get that one, but it's right in the middle, so it takes even longer to get it out of the way. And you're always gonna. I mean, the way I play board games that have this many options is I always seem to approach them a little bit different. I'm not like Mr. Always go for the islands and Feast for Odin guy over here. Wow, you can't win without going for islands.
No, I just love to bug you because I can look at the scoring sheets. I'm like, oh, Carl's going to the island game.
Well, now you can go look on my board game arena records, and it'll show you I've tried the animal strategy. I've tried all kinds of stuff.
It doesn't work.
You need islands to win. You need islands. You need at least one island to win.
Fair. But yeah, so I feel like
you just had to mention a Feast for Odin in this video.
Yeah, that was my way of doing it. So yeah, I approach games with like multiple strategies and multiple routes you can take, where every time I play I feel like I want to try something else to learn what is really effective, but also just to have a different experience. And this is a game that I think rewards people for doing that, because there are a lot of ways you can play and you have to respond to your opponent, so it does have that player interaction element with the entire center of the board being very player interaction focused, so it doesn't necessarily feel like everyone's just doing their own thing. Right. And the wand is also very interactive and stuff like that. So yeah, it's honestly a really good game. One of my favorites of the last couple of years from the ones that have come out, the new ones that I've tried. It's going to be an own it for me. It's definitely going to stay in my collection for a while, and because it doesn't take very long to play, but it's a little bit more of a complex Knizia design, I think this is going to be one I recommend a lot, or would bring to the cabin, or especially would introduce to new players who have gravitated towards Knizia games that haven't played it, and we're not just wanting to play like a quick half an hour experience.
Right.
So yeah, really love this game, and yeah, definitely own it.
Question for you, right? Maybe a couple. First off, did you like it more with 2 players or 3? I know we haven't played it with 4 yet, but
I liked it with both. I thought it was good with both, but I preferred it with 3 because of the competition in the center.
Yeah, that was enough to offset the added downtime or whatever, the added playtime.
There's definitely added playtime, and I think I've said it before, I almost find that in games these days 3 is like the optimal player count for me, almost not universally, but like more so than not, because 4 is too long, but
without getting more out of it sometimes.
Yes. And not every game works the way. Some of them create king-making situations, some of them, it doesn't add enough, but this one, to me, it made the center so much more engaging and interesting, having like not just what I do matter to you, but also the routes that Raj was creating and things like that. So
even the wand too, like it does add some. It makes things tougher and trickier with the third player for sure.
Yeah. So I think that based on that alone, I'm okay with the added playtime if it means having things be a little bit more interesting and interactive.
Cool. Yeah. And so then I think when you featured Ingenious on the last one that played Skip It, or maybe the one before that, Don was, I believe, a Play It, right?
Yeah.
So and they'll share some DNA with the tiles on your board and stuff.
I
know these were compared a lot, but
I thought that they were going to share a lot more. Really, it's like Knizia said, I loved those tiles that had symbols on them. I want to use them again, and that was pretty much the extent of the similarities. Like you're for sure matching symbols in Ingenious. That's the entire point of the game. But it's like you take the cauldron from here, and that's what Ingenious is. You lose the entire action.
Right, of course,
stuff,
the common board, yeah.
So Ingenious to me is a game that I would come back and play and have those fun sessions with, but it's missing the hook. That because I like deeper board game experiences a lot, that I was looking for whereas Witchstone adds that with all the different actions and
right.
Like I would have somewhat similar games with Ingenious, even though there is still a lot of variety there. Whereas Witchstone I feel would have more variety from game to game.
Cool. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah. So it's an own it, and it's a really really good game. Highly recommend it.
Cool.
And I will say, and I don't know if it was just. Lucky on our part, but it's not that expensive of a game. I wasn't expensive when I bought it, and it also wasn't expensive when we bought it for a prize at our stream for one of the prize packages as well. So
yeah, for what you get in the box, it's definitely good bang for your buck.
Yeah, really good bang for your buck.
Yeah. So that's it. Those are our 6 games. Another episode of Own It, Play It, Skip It in the books here. Let us know what you think. If you've played these games or if you've had your eye on any of these, are you surprised by what we've kind of rated these as? Keep in mind, these are our personal. It's not saying that we think you should own it, play it, or skip it necessarily. These are how they apply to us. But yeah, always curious to hear what you think. You can go pop on over to our Discord server. It's just a free kind of chat room to join our community and join hundreds of people chatting about this kind of stuff. Otherwise, anything else you want to throw in here?
Nope, all good.
Cool. Well, thanks as always for watching, and we'll see you next time.